20-13. The Raiders really did prove to everybody that it wasn't a fluke that what happened in those last two games. It wasn't about them beating up on the two New York teams that have some of the worst offenses you've ever seen in a season at one time. Especially now in the new NFL where it's an offensive friendly league and you still got a bad offense. So the Raiders somewhat to everybody had two cherry spots where they were supposed to win games that they were supposed to win. The Raiders wind up being 5-5, but they were motivated. Their fans are motivated. They were motivated. A lot of people were very excited about the Raiders moving forward, even though they have a rookie quarterback that's still learning on the job as we speak. Even though they have a coach that's still learning on the job as we speak in interim coaching Antonio Pierce. And then they have a makeshift group of coordinators since they got rid of, the head coordinators and things like that. So the Raiders are doing a lot of things with a brand new crew. And you know what? You always get excited when you have a brand new crew, especially when they win the first two games. So the Raiders came out yesterday and they had a great game plan and they had a great defensive game plan that kept Miami very honest yesterday, even though Miami still did gain a bunch of yards on the Raiders. It wasn't like Miami wasn't able to still do what they like to do. It just was that they weren't scoring touchdowns. Miami still got 422 yards. Tua still threw for 325 yards. Also, you had a very, very, very fun effort from the run game as well, too. They had 28 rushes as well yesterday, but both teams had 3 turnovers. That was the key. And you know what? That was the difference in the Raiders either getting blown out or keeping the game really close. And the Raiders were able to get those turnovers in the red zone, things like that. They were really good yesterday on the defensive end. Their offense just couldn't do much. AOC, he still had 271 yards, but he threw 3 picks yesterday. He was sacked twice. They need more from Josh Jacobs. They should not have their rookie quarterback, throwing 41 times in a game. They need to get more spacing for Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs had 39 yards yesterday on 14 attempts. That's a 2.8 average. That's not going to cut it. This guy just sat up there and complained for money for 3 months, and he's playing like this. Now he might get cut at the end of the year. Devontae Adams probably had his best game in the last 6 weeks, 7 catches on 82 yards. And then you know what? Hunter Renfrow finally showed up yesterday as well, too. Had a big 31-yard game that put the Raiders in a good position yesterday, but it just still wasn't enough to get the Raiders the win yesterday that they needed. Max Crosby, as usual, big-time effort, big-time game. He did make life hell on Tua, but it just wasn't enough for the Raiders. But you look at Tua's stat, 28 for 39, 2 touchdowns, 325 yards, 103 QBR. Mozart, 86 yards on 22 carries. And then you had Tyreek, as usual, 146 receiving yards on 10 catches yesterday. Absolutely chop suey the Raiders. So this was a good win for the Dolphins. The Dolphins are 7-3 right now, same record as the Browns, but they are the division leader at this point right now in the AFC East, and they do have themselves a nice 1.5 game lead over the Buffalo Bills, who do have that advantage in the tiebreaker, who beat them earlier on this season. So this should be a lot of fun. The Dolphins play their next game on Friday against the Jets, and then the Raiders play their next game next week in Vegas. I'm trying to think exactly who the Raiders are playing. The Raiders play their next game against Kansas City in Vegas. So that should be a lot of fun. And all in all, this was one of the better games of the day yesterday. And that's why we had to talk about it today. So pretty much with that, let's move forward. Let's go ahead and talk about the Lions, who made a late comeback to move to 8-2